Hello, it's Athena, and welcome to another episode of Unrestricted Live. I am super excited for our discussion today because we are bombarded with perfect bodies everywhere we look, and we see thousands of images of beautiful bodies that we dream of having, but what we don't see is the reality of how they got there. Bodybuilding and competitions is something that most of us know about. We see it and think, I could never have the discipline to do that. Perhaps we feel a little worse about ourselves when we are honest that we don't have that kind of discipline in us. But what we don't often hear is the reality of how bodybuilders get competition ready and the emotional, physical, and mental strain that process puts on their bodies. My guest today was a competition winning bodybuilder who stopped competing and went through a beautiful journey of reintegrating into finding her new normal. From having to relearn how to eat to reprogramming her mind on what her body should look like, she's been able to find a happy, healthy existence. Join me as we find out the truth about bodybuilding, what lessons can be learned from it, and how we can find our own balance and happiness within our bodies. So I'm super excited to introduce you to today's guest. Please help me welcome Vanessa. Hello.
Hi.
Excellent. Coming through loud and clear. How are you?
Yay. I'm really good. It's a beautiful sunny day here.
Where are you tuning in from?
So currently I am resided on Turtle Island, which is also known as Canada, and the city that I'm in is about an hour east of Vancouver City. It's on the unceded territories of the Stolo Nation in a city called Mission.
Amazing. So I'm so fascinated to have our chat today because you've had a really interesting journey. And I think it's such an important discussion for all women is kind of body image and the different things that we do and try. And you've taken yourself to extremes and out of extremes. And it's just a beautiful journey. So before we get into that, just tell me a bit about yourself. Give us a little bit of history about you and what you're up to now.
Okay, so a little bit of history about me. From a physical movement perspective, I was a competitive cheerleader, and from there I got a few concussions, stopped, and still wanted a physical practice of some kind. So through some twists and turns, I got into competitive bodybuilding, which we'll talk about later. From there, I transitioned out of it and got into holistic wellness coaching and counseling, which is what I studied in school. And I've been a practicing multidisciplinary artist since as long as I can remember. I've always played music and painted and moved my body in some expressive way. So that's more of what I'm focusing on at the moment.
Awesome. Yeah. And for those of you that aren't able to see the video right now, there's all manner of instruments and beautiful paintings behind Vanessa right now. So definitely multidisciplinary creative. And we actually met in Indonesia at a circus residency out in the middle of nowhere in Indonesia. So we were able to jam together and stuff, which was awesome. So you were a bodybuilder, a competition bodybuilder, which is fascinating because I had no idea. And I think you mentioned it when we were in Indonesia. It's just, you make this assumption about what somebody would look like if they were a bodybuilder and you were not it. I was so fascinated in your story. So I really wanted to talk about that. So tell us how you got into it and just a brief overview of what the experience was like. And then we'll dive into a little bit more of the details.
Yeah, so it's honestly a part of my life that a lot of my recent friends don't know about until I posted about, I made this little video series and shared about it on social media. And most of my friends in the last couple of years were like, I had no idea you did that. And honestly, I tucked that away in my brain too. And even looking back and retelling these stories, it's really trippy to look at these photos and videos of myself and recall those moments and think that that was only a few years ago. So how I got into it was all throughout high school, I was weight training, I was working out, and I continued that on and had a community in the gym. So more and more I was surrounded by people and friends who were bodybuilding or powerlifting. And when I was about 19, I was dating this guy that was getting ready for his first show. So I was basically on his competition training plan and diet and going into his check-ins with his coach with him. And it just dawned on me that I can do this. I'm already halfway through. I'm already kind of doing it. I might as well just commit and do a show myself. So I hired his coach and started prepping for the show. We split up before the competition, but I just went through with it. I ended up winning that show to my surprise because it was actually a very short prep comparing to most people. And then it just continued on with it for another 2 years.
It's incredible to get into something like that and then win the first show as well. That must have really got you hooked. So I'm so curious because we see the finished result, but tell us a bit about what you have to do to get your body ready for a competition like that.
A lot of cardio, a lot of training, and a lot of it is also in food and diet. And there is no blanket one size fits all plan for each person. Like, it really depends on what category you're competing in and what your body type is and how it responds to different training and diet. So I can only speak from my personal experience. What I had to do was a lot of cardio. I was in the gym all the time. I was also lifting pretty heavy weights. So I was doing probably an hour and a half of weight training at least pretty much every day. I'd take an occasional day off. And leading up to the competition, especially the last few weeks, I was doing 1 to 2 cardio sessions a day, and that would be 45 minutes to an hour and a half or something per session, depending on how my body was responding. And for my particular case, I was having pretty low carbs when it came down to competition time. So yeah, I'm a pretty petite person. I'm 5'2". And yeah, the coach that I had, he was also on the low carb style of dieting. So that's what worked for him and what worked for me. I know there's other people who do if it fits your macros and their body responds to higher carbs, lower fats, and they play with those ratios. But for me, it was super low carbs, pretty much none towards the end of it. So it was a lot of training, and with the closer the show came, it became less and less eating, but the training increased versus decreased. So it became a very disciplined, regimented thing every day. You couldn't just decide, I'll wake up today and I don't want to train. I don't want to stick to my diet. For me, once I committed to doing it, I was on it and I never wavered for weeks and weeks on end. So that was the process.
So you mentioned something about water intake and some of the stuff you have to do to actually get ready for the competition. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so there's the weeks leading up to it, which is more I was talking about, but then things really switch up the last 2 days, basically 48 hours-ish right before you step on stage. So quite often what people will do is they will drink a lot of water leading up to it. There's also various ways to do it. I can only speak from what I was seeing was common. And then take a lot of diuretics right before the show, a couple of days before the show, and then cut water out completely for 24 hours. So then what that would do is it sucks your body dry, because a lot of what we think is fat on our bodies is actually just water. That explains why your weight will fluctuate up and down 5 pounds in one day, and you can look really cut one day and then feeling like you don't fit your clothes properly the next day. That's just all water weight. Things that contribute to that are sodium intake and also your water consumption, and using diuretics would also help. So yeah, what people do quite often is there's different techniques that I don't even quite understand scientifically, but yeah, you load water, you take a bunch of diuretics, and then you cut water out. And then that just really sucks you dry and it makes you super veiny. And yeah.
It's just crazy to me. The best I looked, like muscle wise, was after having a parasite in Guatemala for a really long time, because I just couldn't keep anything down. And that was so horrendous and stressful for my body. And then just thinking of these things that you guys have to do to get ready for competition, and the things that we don't see when we look at these beautiful, amazing sculpted bodies and the stuff that you guys go through for that. Tell us a bit about what they're looking for in the competition and how you're measured and marked, and how do you actually win? What are the things that they're looking for to do that?
It depends on what category you're competing in. So there's men's, women's, and even within women's, there's bikini, there's figure, there's fitness, there's bodybuilding. So each category has its own standards. So what people would do is they'll pick what their body type would do the best in. And there are people who compete in multiple categories. I was in women's bikini, which is the least muscular looking one. It So that category is basically a butt and shoulders competition. So a lot of the emphasis is on your glutes and your butt and how round and lean and how big it is and how small your waist is and the ratio from your butt to your waist to your shoulders. So having a wider shoulder. So it basically is looking for the hourglass figure. Mm-hmm. And also leanness, like your muscle definition. So a lot of what they're looking for is shoulder caps, the lines in your shoulders, and a little bit of your upper back. But quite often, certain competitions, people have long hair and cover their backs anyways. And the rubric is always changing, but the main emphasis is legs and butt. And what they're looking for also in that category is overall presentation. So how your hair looks, how your skin looks, how you pose. Posing is a huge part of bodybuilding. People might not think about that, but if anybody wants to compete, definitely get a posing coach because there's mandatory poses and you don't want to work all this time to not present your best angles and show your best silhouettes and physique. So posing is a huge part of that, and stage presence. Yeah, it's everything. And also a huge thing in bodybuilding is tan. Yeah, when you see people taking selfies on show day, they look like Oompa Loompas or super orange. But on stage, that's what makes the muscle definitions pop. And if you don't have that ridiculous tan, you won't stand out and you won't do well. So yeah. It's like, yeah, how even your tan is and how basically it's how good you look overall and also your muscle tone and stuff. And then when you get into different categories is also symmetry is important. So you can't be lopsided or top heavy or bottom heavy. It's just overall symmetry and yeah, muscle tone and fullness and definition.
That sounds like enough to worry about, but also even tan. I remember I used to be addicted to sunless tanner and there was no way I was ever even. My face would be like super brown and then my neck was like this color. I definitely started going in the booths and that sort of thing. And then like bake it in a tanning bed as well. So what did you guys have to go to the personal people that sprayed you? And how did you get that color?
So most people would have a base tan leading up to it. So do tanning beds leading up to the show. And then usually competitions will come with their own package that includes the tanning company that they're working with. That's why everybody looks the same. And there are people who go to their own, but they usually will stand out because they'd be a different shade or a different shade of darkness. So generally what's recommended is sticking to the one that the competition provides, and you get 2 coats generally. So you'll do one. They have this schedule where you have to get one and then go back for another one. And then you have to just do everything you can to not touch water. So when it's raining around showtime, it's very stressful for everybody because that tan, if you get any water on you, it'll start streaking. If you sweat too much, it'll start streaking. If it rubs on your clothes, it'll come off weird. So you just basically have to try your best not to mess up your tan for hours leading up to the show.
It's amazing. And so I was watching your videos and you mentioned gel in the bikinis in the tops.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing. Can you tell us about that?
So the suits that bikini competitors wear, because if you are emphasizing on the butt and you're trying to get the hourglass, your boobs are also a part of that silhouette, right? So there are a lot of women with either naturally large breasts or breast implants are also a really common thing in bodybuilding competitions. It's not a mandatory thing, but it's just really common because it does aid in that look that people are going for. And there's people like me who are just born in the itty bitty titty committee and don't want to go through the process of surgery. So a lot of the bikinis will also come with gel padding options or just crazy padding options like Victoria's Secret bras. So just to fill out, because from far away on stage, like nobody can tell if that's their real boob or not, but it just adds to the overall like look and presentation. So yeah, my bikini was super padded. It was like a water balloon.
And do you get custom bikinis or you just, there's a certain place that you go?
Yeah, so it depends on where you are, but there are whole companies that are dedicated to basically making these competition bikinis because you can custom the color, you can custom the jewels on them, like all the links and the crystals and stuff. You can get 2 chains and I don't know, there's just so many different styles. There's also different trends that like the cuts that are more popular and like the cinch butt, how much of your butt cheek can be showing. There's rules and regulations around that. Yeah.
It's just fascinating to me to find this out because I think for us normal humans, it makes us feel better that there's so much that goes into this. And also the 2 coats of tanning, most people wouldn't get that, or having augmented bikinis, which it's great that you didn't opt for surgery as well, because I know a lot of people are having a lot of complications with that now, and just the stress that puts your body under to try to get a certain look. So it sounds really stressful to have to look at your body in that kind of detail. So I guess with that in mind, and also the whole process, what were some of the challenges that you came up against with going through this process of competition bodybuilding?
Definitely hyper analyzing my body all the time and constantly trying to look for things to improve or compare it to a standard that is, okay, so who's winning? What do they look like? What features do they have? And it's constantly trying to figure out what I can work on in myself and change to match that, to do better. So there's definitely, growing up, I never really thought about my body image that much. I was fortunate to grow up in an environment, and I was also one of those kids I didn't have a lot of baby fat. I never was really self-conscious about my appearance. So this was one of the first times in my life where I started experiencing body image issues and being very critical of myself. Like, my butt's not big enough, my boobs aren't big enough, I'm not lean enough, and just constantly hyper analyzing every little aspect of myself, because it was also so normalized in bodybuilding culture. Everybody around me was that was a sport. It's an aesthetic sport. That is the name of the game. You're trying to change things about how you look to win a competition. So yeah, that definitely had an impact with how I was viewing with myself. It's a constant battle between wanting to bulk up and make certain body parts grow while wanting to get leaner, which is actually really difficult for the body to do. So it's such a fine balance.
And in the pursuit of that, did you find yourself stepping up the risk or the things that you'd put your body through to try to achieve that next thing and that next thing?
Yeah, definitely. Other than pushing myself to the point where I was exhausted and not eating enough. I was malnutritioned in a way. I definitely wasn't eating enough calories for how much I was outputting, but also I was using a lot of stimulants, pre-workouts, and there's something called an ECA stack, which is ephedrine, aspirin, and caffeine, and it's supposed to be a good fat burner. So it's playing with just different ways to try to speed up metabolism, using fat burners and really burning out my adrenal glands in the process, and also starting to dabble into anabolics, which are kind of steroids. I never personally did injectable steroids or anything, but I was definitely dabbling into different kinds of anabolics that were really disrupting my body's hormonal patterns and stuff like that, and just all for the goal of trying to gain muscle and get leaner.
Yeah. And what that must do to your body and your image. I mentioned when I had the parasite, my body was an absolute wreck, but I looked amazing because I'd lost a couple more pounds. And now, having gone through a significant amount of weight loss myself, I've had to go through that process of, yes, I looked amazing then, but I was really unhealthy, and trying to get okay with the fact I have to put my body through extreme things just to get that 5 or 6 pounds, whatever, less, and dehydration look on me. So that's what fascinated me so much about your story. It's like I was wrestling with that body image issue myself, just on a couple pounds. So the extremes that you've been through in terms of weight loss, weight gain, and coming out of that is really fascinating. And before we talk about what the process was after you stopped, I'm curious, what made you decide to stop doing this?
So I won my first competition, which was regional. That qualified me for the provincials. So then I competed in the provincials, and I got second place in that. So that qualified me for the nationals. So then I took a year off again to prep for the nationals. And when I went back in to start prepping, I was at a different place in life. I was starting to see how unhealthy it was for myself and also the people around me, and seeing how problematic it was for a lot of people and how extreme it was getting for them mentally and physically on their bodies. So I was already questioning, why are we doing this? And also, a lot of the goal is to go to nationals, and you can now be eligible to win a pro card if you do really well. And then also having friends that won pro cards and seeing how that actually didn't. It was this coveted thing, but when you really got it, it wasn't anything.
So what is a pro card actually?
It qualifies you to compete in pro competitions. So it's basically just another tier of competitions that you can compete in internationally.
But it doesn't actually get you it's not like some black Amex card that gets you into all the gyms around the world or anything.
No, it gives you clout. You get to say you have one, and you might get more sponsorships, maybe, or if you're training people, you can probably charge more for it as a coach and trainer. But yeah, ultimately, the pro card itself doesn't give you anything.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, right? Some people see it as their achievement and that's their reward, but for me, I would just continue to do the same thing. Nothing in my life would actually get better because I wasn't a trainer or anything. So seeing what the end goal was and realizing that's not what I wanted. And so I was questioning that. So I was questioning in myself what holistic wellness and actual well-being felt like. And it was also around this time that I was dabbling into psychedelics. You might know how psychedelics are. They make you just question everything about yourself and your life and just see things from a completely different perspective. So after those experiences, and I was starting to prep for nationals, and I was starting to book the plane ticket, book the tan, and going through all these motions, and also just seeing the bill add up of how expensive this was going to be. Flying out to that competition was in Halifax. So flights within Canada are very expensive. And then it was flying to Halifax, booking the hotel. And I was just like, this is so expensive and it's going to cost me so much time and energy. And at that time, I was in the process of starting school as a counselor and starting yoga teacher training, which are both things that I was really passionate and interested in and also required a lot of my attention and energy. So I just kind of outweighed the two things. I'm like, is bodybuilding worth it? And just really quickly, I was like, no, I'm doing it because this is what everybody around me is doing. I'm on this cycle of competition after another competition. And I didn't want to be on that wheel anymore. I wanted to go somewhere else and explore other parts of myself spiritually and physically.
I love that part of the story because a lot of what I talk about on Unrestricted is breaking out of these societal norms. You were in this niche that had very extreme, specific norms that you needed to follow, but questioning what is the point of all this and what does this actually get me? Most of us probably have something in our life that we've pursued endlessly without actually stopping and questioning, what does this bring me? What's the end goal? And what am I getting out of this? So on the psychedelics front, I actually have Michael Pollan's book,
How
to Change Your Mind, right here on the bedside table. And in season 1, we talked to Holly, who's a shaman and leads people through psychedelic journeys. I have not done it myself, but definitely been around people. And I'm really fascinated in how that's used, particularly in spiritual setting. And it sounds like you started having that kind of awakening within yourself and also finding alternative passions that were igniting you, like the coaching and yoga teacher training. And I think that's so crucial for people, especially when they start to question, why am I doing this? And what am I doing? Especially a lot of people right now are finding themselves in situations where their career is not available to them anymore. That was the only thing that they did. Now they have extra time and they don't know what they like doing. So finding new passions and finding new things to sink your teeth into that are better for you can have such an impact on your well-being and the direction in your life. So it sounds like that's what happened. So I'm curious what your process was like after you stopped and what challenges you came across and how you overcame them.
So it was interesting because at the time when I stopped, I was very deep into the industry. I was working in a meal prep company that supplied largely to competitors. So my work, and I was also working in a supplement store. So both my jobs are very heavily involved in that industry. And my partner at the time was a coach and a competitor, and everybody in our life was also in that lifestyle. So a part of quitting was also closing a door and stepping away from a lot of these things and this chapter of my life. And I was lucky to be in school at the time, holistic counseling school. So entire program I was in was just constant group therapy and personal therapy. So I had a lot of support around transitioning out into something new. A lot of the challenges that came out of not just leaving this, but just this entire period of my life that I still experience to a certain degree is this hyper awareness around my body and food. For years after that, even after I stopped competing, I noticed that I would still have tics and triggers around, especially carbs and eating foods that I was previously labeled as would make me gain weight. and really reestablishing my relationship with those foods and learning how to eat without this anxiety and panic that this was going to make me fat. And also something that came from the extreme yo-yo dieting was, I don't know what it's called, but I know there's an off switch in your body that tells you're full. Mine wasn't working. I was constantly on this cycle of extreme dieting and depletion. And then afterwards, I would go through phases of complete binge eating. I didn't know when to stop. I didn't know when I was full. So yeah, after that, it was like trying to find out what a normal diet looked like. And that was really challenging because I was so used to meticulously weighing and calculating the macros and grams on my food. Going back into normal life of just having a portion of food that feels right and looks right was hard. It was hard to decide, oh, is this enough? Is this too much? Is this too little? Am I full? Am I hungry? I genuinely didn't know for the longest time. So it was definitely, yeah.
That's, it's so interesting because I think intuition is something in our modern lifestyle that we've outsourced to other things, to technology, to people telling us specific diets that we need to follow. And even with phones and devices and everything, we've cut ourselves off from this amazing intuitive machine that we have within ourselves. And when you cut that off, it can take so long to reconnect with it and also to override the brain, the distrust of it. Because I had something similar. I did a candida diet over 10 years ago, and you can't have fruit on that. So it was only in the last year that I started really introducing fruit back into my diet, because it was something that had been not allowed on that diet, and I just never reincorporated it back into the way that I ate. So it's so fascinating to go through that process, but the intuition that we have within our bodies. What do you look for now when you're eating? What kind of signals and things does your body give you, or how did you get back in touch with that side of you?
Trial and error and a lot of mindfulness practice. Really connecting with my food before I eat it was something that really helped me, because I also noticed a lot of mindless eating. Those moments where I would just be like a robot, my hands moving, my mouth chewing, but I'm not really registering the fact that I'm eating, until the point where I almost feel sick because I don't even know how much I just ate. Reintroducing that concept of first connecting with my food before I eat it and recognizing it as energy and recognizing where it came from. And then really being present as much as possible with it while I'm eating, making sure that my brain is registering that I'm chewing, that I'm swallowing, that it's fulfilling me. So then when it's done, it's been this whole experience, not just I blinked, now my food is gone, now I need more, because I don't actually know that I just ate.
You just brought back a funny memory for me. Coming to Indonesia, it was like literally straight out of my like corporate London fast-paced lifestyle. So there was so many things in that experience that were just so overwhelming, but also everybody before they ate would sit there and thank their food and look at it and take it all in. And I'm just sitting there, what is everyone doing? Because I'm that person that's just like, I shovel my food in before I even realize that it's gone. So like definitely not as present with that as I should be, and just being around that and being around everybody else where it wasn't a weird thing to take a moment and look at your food is help me be present with that. But I think it's a wonderful tip, actually, if you're very disconnected from your food, to not have the TV on, not have your phone there, and maybe just sit with your food and take it in. Mm-hmm. What were some of the other lessons that you took away from this experience? Because I know it wasn't all bad. There was some like really great things that you took from this.
Yeah, I don't really want to look back and paint it as this awful struggle that I went through, because when I was in it, I genuinely really enjoyed what I was doing. It was a challenge in like a good way. It helped me set a goal, make a plan, stick to the plan, and then achieve that goal. It was very broken down into steps that were very tangible and action. And I think I was at a place in my life where I needed that degree of control, where it help me feel like I had control over something. Sometimes externally, there's things going on that are out of my reach, but within myself, I can decide that, no, I'm going to stick to this. I'm going to commit to it. And then having results physically visible that I can feel and see and touch, and knowing that I did this. Nobody can do this for me. Nobody can make sure I stick to my diet. Nobody can lift these weights for me or run. I have to commit to myself to do this, and then have yeah, just having these tangible results that I can achieve over time, because it's also not overnight. It's not I do my workout and eat clean for one day, then I'll suddenly just wake up the next day looking amazing or being jacked. It was over the course of weeks and months of training and seeing how that can result in something. So I feel like taking that out of the context of bodybuilding, it's really helped me just connect with the process of dedication when I want something and how to achieve the things that I want.
Yeah, it's insane. And patience over time gives you results. And so many people are looking for things to happen overnight, or that quick fix, or that 3-day cleanse. It's just going to transform their body. And it's not really how it works. So teaching yourself that you can get results with a longer term payoff and dedication, regardless of how you feel about it now, going through that process is going to be amazing, because that you can do that. You can apply that to anything that you put your mind to.
How to cook.
Yeah, you said, because that was having to be creative within very restrictive ways of eating, right?
Yeah. I talk more about it in my YouTube video. People want to hear more about that side of it. But yeah, it taught me so much about food and nutrition and how to work with it and what foods do and what they feel like in my body. Because through the process of only eating a certain amount of food at a very scheduled routine, I can immediately feel how my body reacts to what I'm eating, even if I just switch it up slightly. So that was also really interesting to build that connection between, it matters massively what I put in because my body reacts to it and I can feel it.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that up, because I think I was 19 when that first really hit home, how much food has an impact on our health. I was diagnosed with a health condition related to female stuff, and the solution was for me to lose weight. And they set me up with a dietitian, and I was like, this is crazy. You should be giving me pills. And they were like, nope. So it was the first time that I learned about calories and stuff. And then I lost the amount of weight that they told me to lose, and my problems went away like that. And I was just like, holy crap, I can't believe food can have that kind of an impact on something that we're so disconnected to as a society, particularly American society. We're just told to take pills for everything. And then again, I did the same thing. I cured myself of a health problem going on a candida diet. And then when I reintroduced those foods, the way my body reacted to it was just crazy. These beautiful machines that we have also take a lot of stress that we don't realize how that impacts us. If we're just eating these diets that aren't good for our body manages it. But when we remove it and then reintroduce it, we can see how much of an impact that has. And one of the things that you and I both share is we don't drink alcohol. We've decided this is something that no longer serves our body. So I'm curious why you chose that lifestyle and why you recommend it to others.
My journey of how I stopped drinking was, I think bodybuilding kick-started it in a lot of ways, because alcohol or sugar doesn't fit in my diet. So I just cut it out completely. I didn't even question it. And then when I hadn't drank for months, I realized I didn't even miss it. And then when I started trying to drink again, my tolerance was so low, I just end up feeling crappy after I drank. So that was more of a deterrent. And then I afterwards went through a phase where I was trying to cope with emotions with drinking, which personally, it didn't help me. For people, it works as a number in a way, but it honestly just made me feel worse. And then I felt horrible. And I just realized that it wasn't even something that I enjoyed. It was something that I had been convinced was what was supposed to be desirable, was supposed to be like the reward or the treat. But when I really connected with my body and how I felt when I consumed alcohol, it didn't want it. It was this cringy, nauseating feeling. And then I had an experience where I was hospitalized after a series of events and spent a night of just puking alcohol out of my face for hours. After that, even just smelling alcohol made me feel really nauseous. And this was actually, I think this was actually before bodybuilding, but from then on, I already was turned off of booze. And then after bodybuilding, not having it, I was just, I don't need this. And the longer time went on, the less appealing it just became. And now to the point where I'll maybe have a sip of someone's beer if they tell me it's really good. But otherwise, I don't have my own drink. I don't drink to be intoxicated or tipsy in any way. It's just not something I enjoy. I don't find it helps and serves me in any way. So it's not in my life.
Yeah, it's interesting the conditioning and the messages that we get that this is something that's like celebration and it's good for us and it's a treat, but our body treats it as a poison. It literally thinks
Yeah.
that we're poisoning it and that's how it reacts. And we don't realize, again, because it can be so strong, like what it feels like when we take it away and then reintroduce it and our body's, what are you poisoning me again? I thought we were over this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely on that intuition side. It's numbing in so many ways with the hunger, with the emotions, with everything, but then it causes anxiety and lack of sleep and everything else that goes with it. It's really cool that that's also something you must be very in touch with your body. Before we wrap up, I'm curious what some of your tips would be for women who are trying to find their healthy weight and find a good place where they're happy with their body.
Stop looking at it like a number. Stop weighing yourself and looking at the number and having like goal numbers of what you want to lose, and stop looking. I had a huge problem looking at my food in terms of numbers of how many grams of carbs is this? How much does this weigh? Is this 5 ounces? And once I stopped, untrain myself to start seeing things in numbers and just become more aware of what. It's not about how much, it's more of what I was doing. And what really helped me was having a physical practice that I actually enjoyed. Not running to lose a certain amount of calories to make up for that extra donut I ate or apple that I want to eat later, and just moving and dancing and doing yoga, or like for you, like training circus, and for me, like doing acro, getting stronger. And with those goals of wanting to just feel good or have a certain goal that's more expression based. I want to do a certain skill. I want to be able to do this move with ease and express with my body more. And that's why I move. And also then your body will get used to all the happy chemicals that movement and exercise and breath will just naturally produce. So having that relationship with movement that's not driven from a place of fear and wanting to lose and guilt, and just genuinely falling in love with the movement. And the same thing goes with food. Rather than seeing this as, oh, this is going to help me gain weight or lose weight, I just start eating foods that make me feel good, but not in the, well, chips make me feel good because they make me happy right now, but just in a way that my body is, yes, I love it. I want more of it. Yeah, I just started to pick out certain foods that feels good. And I was talking to a friend the other day about, again, diet and how do you measure when your gut is healthy. We're talking about gut health. So how do you measure when your gut is happy? And she was talking about her poops. Are you going regularly? Does your gut feel happy? Because so much of our overall hormones and serotonins and dopamine have a lot to do with our gut health. Yeah, I feel like just take care of the inside, and it's a feedback loop. Once you do these things and have these practices and you feel good doing it, you just naturally want more and more of it. And you'll notice when you fall off that path, and you'll know what your life looks like when you're in alignment with these things that genuinely feel good to you intuitively. And I feel like how you look and my body weight or like body fat ratio or whatever just follows that. When I feel good about what I'm doing, I just naturally also feel good about the way I look because my body will match my internal state.
100%. Yeah. I've had the same experience. So everybody asked me what diet I went on and what workout regime I went on. And I was like, I quit drinking and I wanted to feel superhuman. And everything that I've done has been trying to feel just superhuman. And it's not about reaching crazy things. I just want to feel that energy. I look on the outside how I feel on the inside, but I've not dieted. I've not told myself I can only have this type of food. And then with the working out, that was so I could do silks because I loved that. And I loved my body being able to express itself. It wasn't about, I need to get down to this weight or whatever. So yeah, it's a really crazy thing. Everybody's so obsessed with the numbers or how they need to do it in a certain way or have a specific way of doing it, when actually the why you are doing it will have so much of an impact. So if you can get to a place where it's, I want to feel self-love, I want to be confident, I want to feel amazing, then everything else falls in line with that. But that can be a really hard jump, I think, for people to get to that point. And it took me a while to get there myself. So this has been super amazing. Where can people find out more about you and your journey?
On the internet, I'm everywhere. I have a YouTube channel called Van Lefan, and My Instagram handle is basically the same thing, and I have the blog / like website that I post things on occasionally. So yeah, all those places.
Cool. And we'll add those links in the
Yeah.
description if you're listening to this on any of the podcast platforms, or it'll be just below if you're watching it on YouTube. So before we go, I have one last question that I ask all of my guests, and a little bit of a blind side, but I'm really curious how you would define living unrestricted.
Oh, okay. What comes to mind for me is living moment to moment, following my intuition and my inner truth, and not being restricted by anybody's expectations or even my own conditionings and expectations, and just being really authentic and true in creating and knowing how to identify any limits that I've set for myself when they're coming up, and knowing how to address them and lean into them and move past them. Yeah, I think it's really difficult to be completely unrestricted because there's all these restrictions constantly externally and internally that'll come up. But for me, I think to remain unrestricted through all of this is knowing how to move each step of the way past restrictions that come up.
I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey. I think it's absolutely fascinating. And for those of you that would like to find out more about the whole journey, she's actually posted a 3-video series where she takes you through the competitions and then the body image and the after, and where she went next with it. It's really fascinating watch, and she's got a lot of amazing content, her music, her art. So I highly recommend you go and check out everything Vanessa has going on. So thank you again for joining us. This was amazing.
Thank you so much for hosting. This has been really cool to talk it out, especially with somebody with very similar experiences in different ways.
Yeah, we got to keep encouraging each other, man. We're going on beautiful journeys, and I think the more that we can share this and encourage each other to get to our own happy, unrestricted places, the better the world will be. So yay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will see you very soon.